go from the situation we're in to a better situation. I don't think that's always the most difficult question. I don't think it mostly comes down to just a question of work and doing more of what we're doing more of what the Hamilton Coalition to Stop the War is doing. I heard there's some positions open on the board for anybody who might be interested in that. Doing more of the Palestine solidarity work that the SPHR McMaster is doing a bit of. Doing more of the mining solidarity work that different groups are doing. We need to expand the anti-war movement, the peace movement. One of our problems is that it's very difficult to institutionalize. There's been all this activism in international solidarity, anti-war stuff over the past half century, and it's had an impact. It really has. I think it's very much civilized. In fact, I would argue the Canadian military. It's constrained how the Canadian military can fight. I think it's very important. But very little of it's been institutionalized. Some of it's been institutionalized through like left-wing media, through Rabble or Canadian Dimension, which sort of now articulates those types of viewpoints. But there's very little of it, and it's very difficult to institutionalize this type of work because it's very much going up against power, and it's not. Canadians don't have a perceived direct self-interest, so it's difficult to find funding. It's difficult to find support, but it's necessary, and we need to do more of it. In the book, one thing I put forward as I elaborate a bit of the idea for setting up the Canadian Foreign Policy Institute. People can you can check that out on foreignpolicy.ca. It's live right now, and you can there's a sign-up sheet in the back. And it's just an attempt to initially at least be a repository of critical information on Canadian foreign policy, with greater ambitions with time, depending on if there's support, depending on if there's ability to hire somebody, etc. But really, we need to build on the activism that's being done, to amplify the activism that's being done, and to there's room to maneuver, right? There's room to maneuver with labor unions, right? There's obviously people in the room here who are active with their locals. There's room to maneuver with some of this stuff within labor unions. There's probably room to maneuver with some of the left institutions like the CCPA or the Rideau Institute. There's room to push them in a better direction. The NDP, that's a bit more complicated, but we need to be building that activism. I think I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Yves. As you might have noticed, refreshments are available now. We have not just water, but coffee and also cookies. And
tea.
And tea.
Decaf,
well.
decaf herbal as well.
That's a decaf tea. So, this book here is enormously valuable. I've had the privilege of having been able to look through it beforehand as I spoke with Yves Engler on the radio about his book. As you gathered from the presentation, the book spans 4 major areas of study. The first is the Social Democratic Party here in English Canada, the NDP. And there's 3 other areas. What Yves is looking at is why is progress so slow on the issues that are of concern to people that are interested in social justice. So Palestine, anti-war activities, anti-imperialism, these issues of foreign policy, it's been a very heavy grind to get progress. And there has been progress on Palestine in the last 10 or 15 years. There's been progress in the base of the NDP. The NDP membership has increasingly come to support Palestine and almost won a big battle recently, getting much closer to getting the NDP to adopt better positions than they had ever been. Labor unions, the base of labor unions is increasingly pro-Palestine. Private sector, public sector, young people, whatever the case may be, these movements are growing across the country. But we run up against this establishment, a left wing that's supposed to be moving society forward, but seems to be stopping us and stalling us in terms of the leadership of these areas. So that's the NDP, That's labor unions, the organized labor unions, think tanks, left-wing think tanks like the Rideau Institute, and also public intellectuals. These are 4 areas in which there needs to be improvement. So I thank Yves for putting it together for us. The book has extensive detail for being such a short and readable book. My father read it in a single day, and it contained discussion of all of those things that I mentioned. Yves spoke for 2 hours today at McMaster about the NDP's history on Palestine. So his knowledge of this is quite extensive. So I'm very thankful for Yves for taking a systematic analysis of why we're slowing down or why we've had slow progress on all of these issues and in an effort to understand the situation so that we can improve it. So Yves, thanks very much for presenting on that today.